I finally got back in. Oh my goodness. I got back in. Um, okay. We've had nothing but problems with the internet here. I don't want to apologize because I keep saying that I'm going to do this. The truth about doxing, because of everything happening in the community. I've made a little bit of a change. I said I wasn't going to talk about a certain person anymore, and I'm not going to on YouTube. I am going to look at problematic behaviors and some of the claims, but I'm not going to talk directly about that certain person. Now, I probably will be talking SHIT on Twitter still because I reached out to her and it didn't go well. It just did not go well. Hey, Nicole. I mean, Noelle, what am I saying? Can you tell I need more coffee? Okay, I want to talk a little bit about doxing today. Why? Because someone keeps bringing that up. Doxing swears they don't dox. Do you know what doxing actually means? This person said it's a criminal crime. Everybody's doing this criminal crime but her. Um, a dox, the actual definition, the legal definition, is a release of any personal information, especially information that can be traced back to you, reveal the real you. Say you're in Reddit under some goofy name like I love farts, and somebody says, "Oh, I love farts as so and so, and they live at such and such." Even if you just say they're so and so, that's a dox. You can dox somebody by releasing their name if it's not something that they have lived under. Now, for me personally, that would not work because I wrote for Pathos for 10 years under my real name, which I use here a lot, Suzanne Titkemeyer. So they're not doing a criminal crime um, for some of the stuff, but some of it, the rest, yes. Yes, 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 doing a criminal crime. I can't get over that phrase. I just got the biggest laugh out of that when I heard it's coming out of somebody's mouth. Um, it's really just a reveal of personal, private, identifiable information. It's just that simple. And a lot of times it's used as a vehicle for revenge via the violation of privacy. There are a lot of people that use it to shake down other people, to dox them, threaten a dox so that somebody will behave or do whatever they want. It's it's a power move. It really is. It's an abusive power move. It's what abusers do. Victims may also be shown their details as proof that they have been doxxed, as a form of intimidation. Once the perpetrator does that, they can use their fear against the person and they gain power in the upper hand. And there are a lot of creators that have to use fear and power to keep others in line. Confused on where to go to get this. Please don't stop till they find it. I hope they find it. All I did was go live on something that I had up, and I saw there were a ton of people waiting last night, and I was not able to get on. I have difficulties sometimes with eSave, which is the only internet carrier here, and they got copper wire out there. So having enough internet has always been a problem here for me, and it probably always will until the upgrade comes from one of the other providers. Is there a couple other providers in this area? I may have to go to satellite at this rate. I'm trying not to. Where was I? I was talking about the people using extortion and coercion when they're doxing and say, hey, I have your name, I have your social security number, I have this. If you don't stop doing that, do this, whatever, we're going to release it. That's actually pretty far against the law. Hopefully soon. And if they don't show up soon, they're going to have to catch me on the replay. This is not going to be monetized at all because I want to be able to say the word doxed and doxing freely without having YouTube spank me, which they routinely do anytime I talk about these internet things. There's actually 2 federal laws that are in place right now, 2 that cover the subject of doxing and stalking. There's the Interstate Communication Statute that makes doxing illegal, that if you're going to sue somebody for doxing you, You would do it through this federal law. And there are some states that have pretty strict anti-doxing law. I think I was reading the other day that Colorado has some very strict doxing laws. So if you dox somebody in Colorado and they turn around and sue you, you can really pay a big fine or go away to jail actually. The second federal law is the interstate stalking statute. That first law, the interstate communication statute, cannot be used for doxing unless you can prove there is a clear threat. And I don't mean people on YouTube, Twitter, or Reddit laughing and going, ha 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 ha, I hope your hair keeps falling out, or something like that, or saying, I hope this happens to you. That's not what they would consider a clear-cut threat to enforce this law. It would have to be something like, I'm coming to your house to cut your head off. A direct threat directed at you that involves the doxing. That is the only way that this particular federal law can work. It doesn't apply for anything else. The second law, hey Bliss, that second law is the interstate stalking statute. You would think that that would be enough to scare the crap out of anybody who is stalking somebody online. God knows there are a lot of stalkers out there. I have had a stalker for well over a year, almost 2 years. And what I do with this person, I block him religiously. Every time he pops up, block. I hit block every time. I don't mention him. I don't say his name. I ignore him in every way, shape, and form. Every time he pops up on a new platform in my timeline, blockity, block, block, block. I have no compunction about that. My lawyer advised me to do that, to have nothing to do with the stalker, to block them at every opportunity. And there are actions you can take that prove that your stalker is stalking you. But the biggest thing you have to do legally is besides the fact that you are documenting every time they stalk you, you have to completely ignore them. You have to block them. You can't turn around and fight with them like certain people do. You just can't. The doxing must be threatening. Yes, it has to be physically, directly threatening. It can't be something stupid. Keep a paper trail on all of this. Yes. I agree with that, Prairie. Fuck that. Fuck all of them, because I think that's some bullshit. The way this law is set up. No, it's not only federal. Some states have anti-stalking laws. Some states have very strict anti-stalking laws and anti-doxing laws. Like I said, I think Colorado is one of those where you can really pull some big fines and jail time if you do it and they catch you at it. That's why you have to document, and block the person. You have to be able to show law enforcement you've done everything within your power to prevent the stalking, that you're not engaging in it, that you're not riling up the troops. You can't keep running your mouth about the people who are stalking and doxing you. If you do, your whole case flies out the window and they won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Now, I'm going to give you a really depressing statistic. That interstate stalking statute, they guesstimate there's 3 million victims of stalking a year that apply or qualify to under this federal statute. Do you know how many of them actually make it to prosecution every year? You're going to be shocked. 3. And this is from the federal government's own statistics. So you're better off. You're way better off if you can document, and then find out what kind of stalking and doxing laws that your state has, because this is one of those things where it might be easier to get prosecuted at the state level, depending on the state. If the state has kept up with technology and they have strict laws on this, go for it. The legal system is still stuck in the 80s, 30s. I can't read this morning. They really need to revamp the entire system to catch up with the internet social media age. Absolutely bliss. It is just crazy, very crazy what they aren't prosecuting. It blows my mind. Hey, B, because if you look at some of this, and like I said, you cannot use that interstate communication statute to claim you're being doxxed unless you can prove there is a direct possible physical threat to you. If it's something like a bunch of people giggling and saying, "Gee, I hope so and so loses their platform," that's not considered a threat. Saying, "Gee, I have this giant butcher knife and I have their address and I'm going to go cut off their head," that's a direct threat. Some of the things that we've seen listed recently as direct threats and someone claiming there is no such thing as doxing actually are doxing, and they aren't direct threats. Like I said earlier, the federal definition of doxing is someone releasing any personal information, including your name, that can trace back to you. That if somebody was determined that they could show up at your house and give you a Sicilian necktie, that is the point where you can get the federal government to help you with the doxing. But before that, it really depends upon your state and your state laws on that. Doxing is wrong. I agree. Point blank wrong. I agree, JJ. I think doxing is wrong. I know a lot of people that participate in it. So there's that. So you can't, if you're online screaming all the time about your doxing or stalking and you're calling the person out and stuff, guess what? The law is not going to help you with that, because they look at it that it's two to tango, that you are doing some you're engaging in problematic behavior that is just driving the stalker further and further along. But he did stop physically following and Prairie, that's a wild story. Holding me at gunpoint to the police drive. That's a little bit different. And I don't blame you for getting weapons training. I would do it if I had somebody who I thought was serious threat. The situation with me, I don't think the person will ever take it real life. I think they just talk a lot. For her, I think it's really about the attention and not fear. She wouldn't be all over the place like she is if she was scared for her family. Absolutely, Noelle. That tells me that all this verklimping and carrying on and crying and saying I'm the victim, it's just bullshit. It's super bullshit. She just wants attention. Is doxing and harassing the same law? I don't know about the harassing, how this falls out with the federal law. I know that the interstate communication statute does address when you start getting threats. It's not just doxing. It covers threats too. If you're getting threats online and they're credible threats, somebody can be prosecuted under this law, even if they aren't doxing you. But again, you know how law enforcement, how slowly they have to catch up with technology. A lot of them won't even do that. I mean, I saw in the Todd Ferguson murder, and I call it a murder, even though they ruled it not a murder, that law enforcement and others, they're just not that eager to prosecute these things. Because Todd Ferguson had been the target of New Independent Fundamentalist Baptist harassment for a couple of years. Scary harassment, where they were sending him, "We know where you live, we're going to cut your head off" kind of threats. And he disappeared. He disappeared while buying shoes for one of his kids, I think it was. He disappeared in the street, and they found his body in an alleyway with a wound on the very top of his head, like the kind of wound you get if somebody picked up a rock or a brick or a hammer and knocked you in the head, on the very top. The coroner ruled it a natural death. They said that he had a heart attack and fell down in the alley and hit the top of his head on something. I don't buy that. I know that jurisdictions that have Coroners instead of medical examiners tend to really screw this up in order to keep their clearance rates low. This is the thing. And I've heard so many awful things about Columbus, Ohio, and justice there that I don't doubt at all. But he had been receiving genuine threats that could have been prosecuted under that federal law. She uses it like her financial advantage for sure. I'm not saying she may not get scared every now and then, but at the same time, she revels in the attention. Bliss, exactly. She does. She absolutely does. No, well, I don't know if they didn't pursue it because they couldn't win. But the cops had looked at the new IFB angle, and a lot of us had talked to them and said, "Hey, you got to look at his YouTube site because this is a YouTuber." One of the most vocal critics about the new fundamentalist independent Baptist and Stephen Anderson ends up disappearing and then reappearing in an alley with his head stove in. And the coroner says, "Oh, he had a heart attack and fell down," even though there was, my understanding, the autopsy report showed no evidence of a heart attack. And not saying that a heart attack will always leave signs, but there usually are some physical signs that are left that are apparently missing on the Todd Ferguson thing. And that infuriates me because I knew Todd well enough to know that he was a very generous guy and he had been victimized by the new IFB in the past. And what they did to him was uncalled for. And I'm pretty sure that they did it. They knew about his body and knew he was dead before the body had been found and before the family knew. And they were rejoicing over his death before the cops put two and two together and figured out who the body was. Coroners are clueless. MEs are where it's at. You are right, Noelle. And I encourage anybody who has any questions about that to look up John Oliver coroners. John Oliver actually did a series on the difference between coroners and medical examiners. And there's such a big difference. And you're so much less likely to get justice if you're murdered if there's a coroner. They can pretty much rule anything however they want. And you don't even necessarily have to be a doctor or an ME to be a coroner. It can be appointed. I saw he was saying that people had been appointed to be coroners, who've been hairdressers, and all kinds of walks of life that have nothing to do with death, and know nothing about death science. And there is a science to it. Real, I understand that. I'll see you later. Coroners are clueless. Yes, and that's the scary thing. How would you like to be murdered, hit in the head, found in an alleyway, while your enemies are rejoicing over your murder before it's announced that you're dead, and then have the coroner say, "Oh, he had a heart attack and hit his head." Man, I would be pissed off. Yes, there are, Prairie, and I think there are. I think that there was none of that. My understanding, and I haven't seen the autopsy report, so this is just opinion and spitballing. From what I understand about the autopsy report, there were no markers in any of that to indicate a heart attack. None. I think they just assumed it because he was a man in his 50s, and that was just one of those likely things. I know that the police in Columbus, Ohio, have their hands full with a tremendous amount of violence on their streets, and they have plenty enough murders. They're not looking for more. I'm not going to blame the cops there. I'm going to lay this at the feet of the coroner, especially after talking to the police in that area repeatedly. I'm glad you said that. My daughter, who's a nurse, has said she would like to go back to school for an ME, and I'm encouraging her. She's got in her blood, yeah, she's got it in her. Yeah, she does. I'm sure she does, and that's needed. There are fewer and fewer MEs, and to add horribleness to the whole situation. And I know this because I have a friend, Cindy Kunzman, whose husband is an ME. That more and more ME's offices are not paying the wages that they once did for MEs, and they are not offering the benefits. They're hiring MEs and putting them on the right to work at will thing, so they can be fired at any time for any reason. How would you like to go through that much schooling and your job opportunities are what merely that bad? Especially if you have a doctor's, especially if you have a doctor's degree, and to go through all that, you're better off going anywhere else, even being a consultant, a paid consultant. Prairie, I have a thought on time investigation. Yes, I bet you do. They, like I said, they dropped that ball. I'm convinced of it. But I would have to run up to Ohio and pull the coroner's report and take a look and all that before I could absolutely 100% say with certainty that that's what happened. But I feel likely it probably is what happened. So that's what a real threat is, as opposed to one of these ridiculous little threats that aren't really threats. Um, there were some things that happened with her or with somebody that aren't threats. If somebody sends me a message saying, I hate you, you stalker, or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, whatever, because that's not a threat. I did get a ton of threats for the new IFB last summer because I exposed a sexual abuse teenage girl scandal going on in their ranks that they were hiding and protecting because it was the sons of some of the ministers involved with the new IFB. And the IFB flooded my YouTube and all of my social media and my email to tell me that they were coming to Costa Rica to hold me down and shave my head. Apparently, in the new fundamentalist independent Baptist, cutting your hair off, if you're a woman, is considered some kind of huge threat. So there's that. But I didn't even bother turning them in because it's quite the process here. All I did was just note it. I mean, it can be done here. You just go down to Santa Cruz, the nearest big city. You file denunciation against anybody. Denunciate against anybody anywhere in the world. And that's as good as a restraining order. Yes, Jenna, that would be good. If UVA is paying, they're going to want her to work there, and they do have. I know they do have some people there that's all they do, and it's not actually like working for the ME's office in say Charlottesville or DC. She needs to stick with UVA. I cannot say enough nice things about UVA or Johns Hopkins. They've been great for me, and they've done some great things for my health. I was just telling my husband earlier that one of the most helpful things that was done for me and my asthma was when I went in for occupational therapy, relearning how to breathe. Now, I don't do a couple of things. Like she told me I need to talk in a higher, lighter voice all the time now to make it less strenuous in my voice. I'm not able to do that. I sound ridiculous. And I try not to do vocal fry either with the popping and stuff. I quit paying much attention to the new IFB after last summer's cover up. They had a few decent ideas, but deceit makes a poisonous tree. That is a tree with extremely poisonous fruit. Um, yeah, mostly leave the IFB alone and just covered the new IFB when I was with No Longer Quivering because their thoughts and actions were so much more poisonous. Their leader, Stephen Anderson, is banned from a large number of countries. And there's a reason for that. He is, oh, I see what time it is. I was told to speak in my upper register also. Yeah, healthy asthma. They want me to talk like this, and I just can't do that. I can't maintain that any length of time, and I think that's kind of strenuous on my voice. I don't know why. So I talk like this. I talk like I'm meant to talk, I guess you'd say. I hate to chat and run, but I absolutely must today. we have to take a friend to the airport, flying out. And I think we're going to hit some places in Liberia that we did not hit the other day when I picked up my husband in that hideous cluster, you know what, of a time. Like I said, I finally went and sat on this bench by the door. And when the security guard came around, I told her, I said, "You're going to have to arrest me to get me to move because I am not moving off this bench. I no longer can stand for 2 hours in direct sunlight and almost 100-degree weather without passing out or something." And there was nothing to drink. It was bad. So today we're just dropping her off. I'm happy about that because it's really bad. Noel, I hope he doesn't either. He said that he was going to turn to law enforcement. I hope he does turn to law enforcement. Hobby Lobby. Oh, I wish I could go to Hobby Lobby and Barnes and Nobles. Um, yeah, everything will be fine for me. I have that confidence. So you guys have a great day. Enjoy yourselves. Try not to get too overheated. If you're not used to the heat, it could really, really be something else. So stay in if you can in the heat. If you can't, at least have some fun and make sure you got water. See you guys later.